Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money Podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money Podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm pleased to be joined today by Loverde and Cathy Sikorski. Joy and Cathy are both authors and speakers. In this episode, we'll be discussing how we can change the way we think about money and caregiving. Joy and Cathy, welcome to the Get Ready Money Podcast. Thanks for being here today.
Delighted.
Thank you.
Yeah, excited for this conversation. As this is a question I always start with, tell us a little bit about yourselves, what are your origin stories? Joy, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm an author of two books. One is on caregiving and the other is on how we're going to take care of ourselves as we age. And my origin began over 35 years ago, mostly in corporate America, helping employees deal with the juggling of work and family.
And I am an elder lawyer by trade in Pennsylvania, but mostly I spend my time speaking to groups, hopefully in corporate America. I think that's where they need the most help right now with the work and caregiving issue. I have written 3 books, 2 of which really concentrate on the focus of how to prepare and plan for this caregiving and how to have these conversations about caregiving with the people in our lives that it's important to have them with, from our families to our friends, to the professionals, to our work. So that's why I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And I think, this leads right into the first question is, why is caregiving often overlooked in the planning process?
Well, for me, I would say people think by definition you go to a lawyer when you have a crisis. So even though my form of law, elder law, and often people confuse estate lawyers with elder lawyers, we don't quite do exactly the same thing, although it certainly crosses over. But in elder law, where we're dealing with these issues around caregiving, because that's really what it is, people come to us in a crisis. And so a big part of our work is educating the public, which is why I've really shifted my work to, rather than personal client work, to educating the public about how planning is so important so that when the crisis comes, and Joy will tell you what the crisis is when someone gets into a situation where they need caregiving, where caregiving is either, ultimately going to happen or it's already happening, a sudden stroke or a diagnosis, et cetera, et cetera. But nobody wants to talk about these things, right? Nobody wants to talk about the neighbor's dog might bite you. And when that happens, then they'll go to a lawyer. It's the same thing. And so I believe as professionals, all 3 of us as professionals, it behooves us to be the educators. Planning is not fun in this arena. And so the more we can coax people and convince them that planning actually makes their lives better, the better off everyone will be.
Right. I have a similar experience, and having been speaking with people who are working full time and have parents, I have found, this is what they tell me, is they don't plan because they don't know it's possible to plan. So someone once said to me, it wasn't until I saw your Eldercare planner that I understood that there were things I could do because my parents weren't sick and they were young and there was nothing to do. And then when I read that there was plenty to do, I connected the dots and I realized that's how you plan. There was so it was interesting. There was no concept of the knowledge that planning is possible, but we know it is. So it's our job as advocates to say, well, let me help you with the planning process, not the caregiving process, the planning process. And that's what Cathy and I do.
And it's such a great question, Tony, because I love what you just said, Joy, that people don't even know that they should be planning.
Mhm.
So how do we then get that into, right, the world? Because it's the same with financial planning, right? Would anybody say to us, well, I didn't know that financial planning was a thing?
Right. No, they don't. So how do we do it? Well, it's a sensitive time, right? We're talking to people who are already overwhelmed. Adult children are already on overwhelm with work and other personal and professional responsibilities. So one of the ways that I encourage people is just begin the process of talking about money. Has it occurred to you that there's a possibility that as you sit here today and you do your own life, that your parents are on the other side running out of money? And who do you think is going to pick up the tab? So my approach is to present to them a reality and a real situation that will say, well, what do you mean they're running out of money? They're fine. I said, well, why don't you find out?
Love it. Awesome.
Yeah, well, you both covered so much. I think that's important. I mean, there's so many considerations. One is when you talk about financial planning, I think people, those of us in the financial planning arena tend to overestimate how many people understand what a financial planner is. Most people don't have access to a financial planner. I mean, we know many financial planners have AUMs, minimum AUMs of $500,000 or $1 million. It's not very diverse. So I think that's also part of it. Most people don't have access to a planner. So, as we talk about this, is how, if we are a planner, but maybe somebody like an insurance agent who has access, everybody has an auto insurance agent or a homeowner's insurance agent. How can those people start to have conversations with people who are actually talking to everyday Americans?
So I love this question because Tony, every time I write an article, every time I do a podcast, every time I have the opportunity to stand in front of, quite frankly, one or more people, my very first thing, especially in the professional arena, is we need to be collaborators. We will do the best for our clients, whether we have 1, 10, or 100, if we realize that there are many professionals, insurance, legal, geriatric, financial, who can help our clients. We can't know everything and we can't do everything. And so the more we help our clients get to all these cross professionals, the better we are as professionals ourselves, right? And this only raises us as the person that people are going to go to. She took care of me. She got me the help that I needed to plan. She brought to my attention that this is about not just you, but your parents, because that's going to affect you, as Joy just said.
Yeah.
So, yeah, your insurance guy should be having this conversation.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm finding here in Chicago, anyway, with attorney firms, is they're opening up little offices within their office, and they're putting in their aging life plan professionals. They're putting in long-term care insurance people. They're putting in financial planners in the same office and say, okay, when we're done here talking about your will, you're going to go down the hall and you're going to talk to Joe about your money. And then you're going to talk to Nancy about your mother. And they're starting to fill in the partnerships right on the same site. Isn't that a great idea?
It's awesome.
And the thing that irks me is most businesses don't operate like that. These firms are few and far between. So if you are a professional and you have extra office space, put someone else in there who is a partner of yours. Is say, hey, go down this hall. I don't, like you said, I don't know everything, but she does or he does, and we're gonna take good care of you, the whole thing, not just legal or financial.
Exactly.
This is,
Exactly. I
yeah,
can think of a handful in my area that do that. And that's exactly your point, right, Joy? That it's a
yeah,
handful of people who proactively take this course, which is I'm going to lead you to all these other experts, right? And
why is that, Cathy? Why don't professionals partner up?
I have an answer for that.
I
It's
knew you
because
would.
they don't think there's enough pie. There's plenty of pie. We can all get a piece of pie, right? And quite frankly, the more, maybe you'll get less of this pie, but if you're very happy as the pie holder, you're going to tell your kids to give them some of their pie. And then they're going to tell their friends, these are my professionals. You should give them some of your pie. There's plenty of pie. It just might not be where you think it is. Because if you are a full service provider, in that you don't give all the services, but you send people to Joy or Tony after they get their legal documents, right? You're going to be a person that says, she took care of me. She's the one who sent me to Joy. Call Cathy first. She knows all the people. That's the kind of calls that we get, right? So lawyers aren't great about this either. Financial advisors are really bad, and quite frankly, so are lawyers. I tell people all the time, call a lawyer as a financial advisor. Tell them you have clients that you really want them to meet, and form a relationship.
Yeah. But I think you said something there that he is forming a relationship. I know with life insurance agents, they're often just looking for referrals from other professionals just to sell something rather than to provide a valuable service. I mean, have you both run into that?
All day long.
I find long-term care insurance people to be a little bit different. They seem to be a little bit different in that they are much more focused on the whole long-term care issue and process. I have an affinity for that group of people, because they understand that long-term care has just too many moving parts, right? It's not just selling a policy. And they want those clients and their client families, because it is about the family, to be happy that this policy or whatever is working. How about you, Joy? What are you finding?
Absolutely. I have several long-term care experts in my back pocket because that is an arena that I cannot speak about as well as they can. I cover it from an umbrella point of view. So I have those people that they too are constantly trying to educate the financial planners and the attorneys and saying, you and I need to work together, because the long-term care insurance industry is changing dramatically. There's all kinds of new things coming up all the time, and that these people are very much aware and excellent advisors when it comes to money.
And the reason is demographically, we're getting old and sick, and that costs money, right? And so if you can put that into people's heads, and I just mean people, that old and sick and money all go together, and then guide them along that path, you are going to be one of the top-notch advisors in this field.
Right. The bottom line is partner up.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah, and that's a great point. So, as we go there, let's pivot a little bit. Is how can people start the conversation on caregiving?
You mean as a person who has parents and grandparents, or as a professional?
I guess maybe let's break it down, just for anybody, I would think is, whether you're an advisor, whether you're a family member. I mean, it is a little bit different as an advisor, but to me, it's still the same thing. Is you have to talk about it. And it's one of those things nobody wants to talk about because nobody wants to face their mortality.
So no matter if you're a professional or no matter if you're a family member, my advice is to get the word care out of the conversation. The reason is no one thinks about anybody needing care, including themselves. But there is one thing everybody wants, and how I introduce these sensitive topics is by talking about quality of life. So it is quality of life no matter what happens. How are you going to finance a quality of life if you're really well and you live to 120? How are you going to finance a quality of life if you want to live on an island? How are you going to, but you start the conversation with, what is your picture of a quality of life as you age, and how are you going to finance it? And it's just, everybody's open to that conversation. Nobody is open to, what are you going to do if you get sick? I just don't go there. And so the ultimate, end of the conversation ends up in the same place. But I don't use the C word. I just don't.
Care word. This is two different conversations, obviously, one with professionals and one with family. Although professionals, guess what? They got families too. One of the things that I tell people just generally is, especially if you are having a problem with your parents, getting them to get on board with planning in any kind of way, getting powers of attorney, getting wills, getting anything. Tell them that you are doing this for you. You are going to go to the lawyer and you would like them to come with you, not for them. This is not a conversation about them. You want them to hear, or you're going to go to the financial advisor, or you're going to go talk to Joy. You're going to talk to somebody about this issue, whatever your burning issue is. Because my guess is you haven't done it either. Let's go there. Mm-hmm. And so take them to the lawyer, sit down with that lawyer and say, okay, we're going to do my powers of attorney, my will. My mom can hear everything. I have no secrets, right? And let them see the planning phase without pressuring them to do it. Because the other thing is peer pressure, quite frankly. Your best friend Helen told me that she went to see XYZ lawyer. How about if we go? Because Helen recommended that, right? When, especially your parents, if they're older, when they see that their peers are doing it, I mean, it's no different than, our kids tell us, my kids tell me something that they saw on the internet, which is something I've been telling them for 6 weeks, but now they're going to do it because some internet person told them to do it. Right. It's the same. And the key here, obviously, is just starting the conversation. So I love Joy's idea of, let's just talk about your quality of life. Let's just talk about it. I mean, that could be any person. That could be a financial advisor. That could be an insurance person. That could be a lawyer, right? Any of those people. So that's obviously a family thing. Peer to peer, again, I say, go to a lawyer and get your documents. And while you're there, say, listen, I have clients. I happen to be a financial advisor. I'm an insurance salesperson. What you're doing here is important for my clients. And what I'm doing is probably important for your clients. Can we have a conversation about that?
Yeah, and the reason I'm sorry, and I was going to say, the reason I tie it in is most members of the financial services industry know very little about caregiving or things outside their own scope of expertise. But I think the other thing too is, as a professional, if you say to a client, like, get your will done or your trust done, and the client says, well, who did you do? What did you do? And you said, well, I really haven't done it for myself, but I think it's great for you. The client's not going to take it that seriously and not make it a priority. So I think, right, for the advisors out here listening, that's wonderful advice. Do it for yourself so you can see the process. And then you can pass that on to your clients. And it's going to be so much more meaningful and impactful to tell your clients, like, this is my caregiving plan. This is what worked. That's how you, connect with people.
Tony, I love that too. I mean, in conjunction with Joy, like, what is your quality of life? You can say, this is my caregiving plan, because I've been thinking about this for myself or for my mom, or, whatever's happening in your life. Making it personal is really a really good idea.
Yep. Another tip would be to ask for advice, which is what I did. My mom remarried to someone, of course, who wasn't my dad, and he didn't know me very well, and vice versa. But my mom was very happy, and I had to figure out a way to better understand how I could help them should and if anything should happen to them financially. And he had no reason to trust me whatsoever. So I began to form a relationship with him by sitting down on the big easy chairs when he was watching a football game. And we had a couple of beers between us, and I would say, "Hey, Bill, it looks like you're doing pretty good here, and I'm just starting to think about my retirement. Do you have any tips for me?" Well, he was so forthcoming and so delighted that I would ask him about how to plan financially for retirement. And sure enough, he gave me some really good advice, and he began to trust me more. Now, this did not take a short period of time. It took
Right.
about 3 years.
Right.
But we really formed a relationship because I asked for advice.
Right.
I really needed it. And sure enough, it was wonderful. But
And
that's what happens. So your parents, if they remarry and you don't know these people, and we don't know our parents that well anymore after we move out of the house anyway. So asking advice is another great way to begin these conversations.
start now. Like, start now.
Absolutely.
If it's going to take a long time, fine. The other thing that my mother's very ill right now. She's 95 and she's going through a tough time. And I am so fortunate and glad that I took the time to go meet her financial advisor about 5 years ago. Just said, come on, mom, I got to talk to her. I want her to know who I am so that when I call, if anything ever happens, she's like, oh yeah, I know you. It's not crazy. You're not some stranger who's saying I'm now in charge of all your mom's money. Right. Um, it, every relationship, this is all about relationships, isn't it? Every relationship you build is going to benefit you and your clients in this tough, crisis driven time.
Cathy, you bring up a really good point that I talk about all the time, and that is, even if you're a long distance caregiver, you have to go home. You have to be in person. You have to meet these people. You have to meet your parents' friends, their advisors, their neighbors. At some point, you need to be on site so that you can, as you say, form relationships with everybody in their lives. I hear all day long people talking about caregiving from a distance, and I say, when's the last time you were there in person? And then they say, and it's been a long time. And I'll say, well, does it surprise you that things are not going well? Because usually they're complaining about something. And I
Right.
say, you've got to go home. You've got to see them, be with them, spend time with them. Maybe it's a long weekend, whatever, but it doesn't happen by magic if you don't make the effort to go there in person and form relationships.
And let me just add that that's regardless of where they live, even if they're in a facility, if they're in a community, if they're in an assisted living, you still need to go. You
That's right.
need to go. Yeah, that's a really good
One
point.
yeah, and advocate for them. Is if you're not
Exactly.
there, you can't advocate for them or advocate for them effectively.
Not as much as if they've seen you and met you.
That's right. That's right. Because it is tricky. If you're meeting an attorney or a financial planner, they won't necessarily talk to you if they've never met you. Or with your parents sitting by your side saying, it's okay, you could talk to her. She's
Mm-hmm.
my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
But the parent really has to give you the blessing. It's like a relationship HIPAA form, right? You got to have your parent there saying, she's
Gotta
okay.
be you gotta be in their HIPAA pocket.
I love it. No, I think that's a new elder law of term, right?
Right. I like it.
Should we
HIPAA
trademark it?
pocket.
Yes, we should.
Yeah, put a copyright on that one, Cathy.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, so to switch gears, I mean, because each of us is on an aging journey, is what mindset should we have about the aging journey? Because I think understanding our own aging journey will also help us, as we've been talking about with other members of our families and other professionals.
I think Joy hit the nail on the head. Our quality of life. It's
Yeah.
pretty much that. This is exactly what I'm experiencing right now with my mother-in-law, my mother, who's 95, who's, I told you, not well, but our biggest focus right now is her quality of life. whatever that means. Does that mean music? Does that mean television? Does that mean audiobooks? Right? It's as simple as that. But when it boils down to that, you get very, very aware. And wouldn't it be awesome if, as Joy has told us, you could be aware of that long before?
Oh, I love this because so many adult children go to their parents like their parents are a problem to solve. And they never ever stop talking about how you feel. Did you eat right? Are you sleeping? And all that. That's not our job as adult children. Our job is to facilitate the happiness and the quality of life for our parents and siblings and spouses or whoever we're caring for in the moment. And so that at some point, once the problems are solved, we begin to enjoy each other's company on a whole different level.
I love that. We could probably just drop the mic and walk off right now.
That really is a mic drop. Thank you very much. I thought Hippo Pocket was good, but
I mean, we when my mom lived with us in a very cool arrangement. We live in a high rise, and she moved into an apartment that we bought for her, and so she had her independence, and I would go down there every night and watch Wheel of Fortune with her, and that's when the conversations about the big conversations would take place over watching TV and just casual. And I learned that, when I would see her just be so relaxed and feeling safe and needed, this is what quality of life looks like. We're not talking about we're not even talking about the application of money here. We're talking about relating, having fun, laughing together, watching TV together. It's very simple. Life gets real simple, doesn't it, Cathy? When
really
get older, and it's just they just want you to sit by their side and hold their hand or just watch TV with them. It's not complicated, but quality of life is everything to them.
That really says so much. So, I had another question. We didn't really talk about this, but I know both of you deal with this is, red flags, elder abuse, elder financial abuse. So, as caregivers or people who, are facilitating the caregiving processes, what red flags can you watch out for? How can you, what are some landmines you can avoid?
it's so funny that you bring that up because I'm working on a presentation about money and caregiving, and I just made a note to myself to not forget about scams because elders are so and by the way, elders is a dubious term. You don't have to be old to be taken by a scam. These scammers are so good at what they do, and we are so especially nice old ladies, but we're so tend to be nice and kind and want to think we're doing the right thing, or Social Security is calling us so we panic, that kind of thing. I don't know that you can do anything except tell your loved ones from an elder abuse scam point of view that they must always, always, always call a trusted person when they think something is going to happen. Fortunately, I finally got that drilled into my mom and my aunt and a couple other people who are important in my life. At least call me first. Call me before you do anything, and I'll make sure that this is the deal. So a trusted person is great if you have that. As far as abuse from a trusted person, that's a tough one. And this is why I think it's difficult, and it's not going to be what you think it is. Sometimes I think the pendulum has swung a little bit too far the wrong way. Caregiving is hard. Caregiving is frustrating. Caregiving is mentally and physically difficult on a caregiver. And sometimes, and I'm not saying abuse like they beat someone or whatever, but sometimes they may just not be in their best possible place. And you've got to be someone who can maybe step in with grace, but not be so quick to judge. And I think we have to always keep in mind that caregivers may be the ones who need grace and guidance and help in the toughest times, before abuse happens. And perhaps rather than looking at the elder, maybe we should be looking at the caregiver and trying to help them get what they need to stay safe and sane themselves.
And I love what you're saying, Cathy. When I give talks to rooms full of caregivers, I also say it's okay to say no, but we have to have a plan if we do plan to say no, or at least a plan B, because the stresses do cause certain, they have a ripple effect that we don't anticipate when we
Right.
begin the journey. So I was also thinking about your question, Tony, from a technology point of view, which is where a lot of these things happen. It all looks so friendly when they're on the phone or they're on their computer and someone sends them that scam email and they do something crazy and stupid. So to like you said, Cathy, to somehow let them know that the world is not safe on the phone and the computer, and that if they will please just do nothing and run something by us, we can assess whether or not they're in the process of being scammed. It's a difficult conversation, not from having the conversation, but none of us really know what a good scam looks like until it's in our face. It's kind of
Right.
like, so that's the problem. Like you said, they're very creative. I get those emails every day.
Every day.
You better, you better look at this and that. And they have the logo of the company, that
Right.
the whole nine yards. So what can we do is to help our parents and elders understand that they can trust us to guide them through those times where we really don't understand what's going on, but we can help them. It's a crazy world out there, and a lot of it has to do with technology.
Yeah, just a little cute little aside. Social Security put out a couple days ago a big, huge scam alert, just in general. Just in general. We won't call you. We won't, all the things that they will and will not do. And please tell your families. And, because even Social Security knows that they're being used, right, as a scam. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think you both bring up something that I think is the scariest part of it, is that it often is the caregiver or family members who are unfortunately part of the financial abuse or the
Mm-hmm.
overall elder abuse. The other thing that I've seen, and I think Cathy, you brought this up, is the isolation
Mm-hmm.
factor. Is that they become the elder's friend, then they socially isolate them,
Mm-hmm.
or at least isolate them. Oh, you don't want to call your kids about this. You don't need to bother them about this, or it's not a big deal, you can trust me. Or they put on the time pressure. It's like, yeah, you don't have time to call your daughter, because you need to do this today. This deal's going to go away today. So it's like, that
This
makes it hard.
really brings up what Joy is really good at, ever so much more than me, which is solo aging, right?
Mm.
Which is so scary because you have to work a little bit harder to find trustworthy people, right? That you really can depend on to be your power of attorney, to handle your finances, to know about what your financial situation is. But actually no different than family members who are also maybe unsavory.
There are organizations that we can call, the fraud 800 numbers,
Hmm. Hmm.
911 for fraud, and that if you are a solo ager and you are questioning something, there are advisors that are on the other end of a telephone 24/7. And
Awesome.
I spent years researching all kinds of resources in both of my books. That doesn't cost anything, and there's lists and lists of places that we could go for help for many many different reasons, and getting scammed, and wondering about, is this real? I don't know. If you don't have anybody to call in your immediate circle, there are 800 numbers for this.
Joy, would you mind sharing some of those so I could put them in the show notes?
Well, Tony, I don't have them on the top of my head right now.
Oh, no. I mean later by email.
You betcha.
Yeah, so for people watching and listening, those will be in the show notes.
Just a quick tip, all you have to do is Google fraud prevention and in your browser, and it will pop up. So that would be how I would do it, because people are listening, because we're on a podcast that's international. You could find help wherever you live around the world.
100%.
There you go.
So, this is such a tough area. So as we go through this, there's also a lot of myths about caregiving. What myths are you both trying to break about caregiving?
Well, there's so many, but I'll stick with myths and money since that's really our focus. Medicare does not pay for a nursing home.
Yes.
Thank you, Cathy. Now we can drop the mic.
Yeah, now drop the mic.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying for your mom's nursing home except you and your mom.
That's right.
And then if you become truly destitute, because those are the rules, then Medicaid might come in. But remember, the rules are long and complicated, which is why elder lawyers have jobs about how that has to happen. But quite frankly, it really does, in fact, lead you to destitution. So Medicare does not pay for a nursing home. That's a myth.
Or other related services.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, Joy, what do you think? What myth are you trying to break about caregiving and money and aging and money?
This has to do with solo aging, actually. When we are out of family, everybody's died and moved away, and we are now on the road of relationships within people we're not related to, that as we commit to having relationships, we don't really take it as far as we need to, and that is that no one in our immediate circle is going to need me for caregiving services, because this is not what I'm in the game for here. And nothing could be further than the truth. As we age and age with friends and people we're not related to, there is an underlying theme going on here. It's like, well, eventually things may change. Am I up for the task of being a caregiver to someone I'm not related to? No one thinks about it. That's the problem. But with someone like me talking about it all the time now, I'm beginning to see momentum that solo agers are now having discussions with their friends about the possibility of caring for each other in old age.
Oh, Joy, I think you hit on something really, really important. Is you can have, like, having an accountability partner for your money when you're younger.
Yeah.
Is that your circle of friends, unless you don't have any friends, which becomes a whole other conversation, is that you can rely on your friends to be your sounding board for things when something looks off, to help support you. Your friends are probably not going to be your caregivers, but they can also be your support group, I would think.
That's right. And one other thing that I'm hearing from the Solo Ager initiative is that if you are not planning on being a caregiver to your friends, or let's say you're starting to date and you're with somebody in a romantic level, and you're just not up to being a caregiver, those relationships require a conversation about, don't look at me, it's not going to be me, let's make a plan for it not being me.
Can I tell you, that's the same for adult children. There are adult children that are absolutely not going to take that job.
That's right.
You can ask as much as you want. The answer is still going to be no.
I don't know, Cathy, you probably have been seeing the onslaught of articles about adult children flat out saying no. And not only that, but estrangement within families is off the charts, because they're living in a highly stressful world. There are kids that are cutting off their parents. They're not talking to them. Estrangement is here in high numbers. Cosmopolitan had an article about it. It's like kids are cutting their parents off. Washington Post, adult children are saying no to caregiving. If you are, planning for looking back and looking at family, children and grandchildren to take care of you, you really have to think twice about that.
It's not really a good plan.
It's not a plan.
Yes. I mean, we'll start with a man is not a plan and we'll move on from there.
There you go.
I'm not going to say anything on that one.
Okay.
I reserve the right. So to wrap up, what are your number one tips on changing the way we think about caregiving and money?
Well, I just love, I'm stealing this from you, Joy, so you'll probably have to say it again, but I love Joy's thing, which is, what is your quality of life, and go from there. I'm an attorney, I'm an elder lawyer. So my very number one tip is, for heaven's sake, get your documents. The most powerful document you need is a power of attorney, because we're talking about sick people, not dead people, right? I always tell people, elder lawyers are for people who are alive and not well. Estate lawyers are for dead people. And we're not talking about dead people. So get your powers of attorney. Those are for sick people who need help. You can get a will. They're awesome. You should have that. But most people actually already have that piece. They don't have the power of attorney's piece, powers of attorney. So that's my number one tip. My number two tip is plan, and then go ahead and plan.
I'm all for that. My tip is where you live matters. And so it has to do with money, because if you're living in a house and you bought the house, you can look at it as an investment to take, to finance your quality of life as you age. However, if you own a single family home and you're sitting there alone, eventually you will be isolated and alone. So where you live matters as it relates to the quality of life. And I wish that everybody would take a look at, are you destined for a life of isolation? And if not, do something today and use the money that you might get from selling the house to get yourself in a situation where you become social and have the quality of life you deserve.
So as we talk about this, have you seen situations where aging people are teaming up and moving to houses together, sort of like the Golden Girls?
Well, it's got a
have
shelf
either
life.
seen anything?
It's got a huge shelf life, Tony, because eventually something happens, one or the other. So I love that,
yeah.
but it's like fantasy.
They say that's happening,
true.
but it's not really happening yet. I'm not seeing that, but I'm seeing it that it certainly may go that way, especially because of the cost of housing.
And I'll tell you that in our own immediate family, we had a situation where my sister-in-law had a roommate and everything was great, but my sister-in-law got sick and the roommate moved out. She said that's not what she signed up for. So there's all kinds of discussions around home sharing, which we could do on another show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking we need to have a follow-up on this. So where can people connect with each of you and learn more about what you're up to and your resources? Joy, you've got a tremendous amount of resources, and so do you, Cathy.
Joy does. Joy is the resource queen for sure. Yeah. I am a little more simplistic. I have my 2 books. This is a great one for having a conversation, because this is, each chapter is a conversation with somebody important in your life. And this is just issues that you might meet as a caregiver, as well as getting prepared legally. And you are welcome. Anybody listening to this is welcome to email me at Cathy.Sikorski. My name is on the screen right there. Just put a dot in the middle at gmail.com. I'm always open to having any kind of conversation about this. And my website is under construction, but you can go there and read some blogs. That's all you're going to see for right now, which is CathySikorski.com.
It's great. I just go to my website, elderindustry.com. I got everything on there, books and blogs and you name it.
Yeah, and Joy, what is the name of your book or
I
your
have
two
two
books, if
books.
you want to plug both?
Yeah, so the caregiver book is called The Complete Elder Care Planner, and I just completed the fourth edition of that book. And then the other book is called Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old?
Fantastic. And for everybody watching and listening, you can find both Cathy and Joy's books on Amazon and other major book retailers. And the names of the books will also be in the show notes. So if you forget, that's okay. You don't have to keep going back and rewinding because they'll be in the show notes. So Cathy and Joy, thank you so much for joining us today on the Get Ready Money podcast.
Thank you so much, Joy. Such a delight to be with you in the same room. I really enjoyed it very much. Tony, thanks for having us together.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Cathy.
Yeah, my pleasure. I appreciate both of your time and your insight, and I hope for everybody tuning in that you were able to pick up something today to make you think a little bit differently about caregiving and money. And as always, thanks everyone for tuning in to this episode of the Get Ready Money podcast. If you learned something today, please share this episode with somebody else and be sure to subscribe. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.